Empaths weren't sent to heal, but to expose humanity's deepest wounds. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. But what if that journey requires you to stop trying to fix the world and start revealing what it's been hiding? In today's video, we dive into one of Jung's most powerful yet misunderstood truths. Empaths weren't sent to heal others. They were sent to expose the collective shadow we've all ignored. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by others' pain or misunderstood for your sensitivity, this message is for you. Are you ready to reclaim your power, not as a healer, but as a mirror? Leave a comment below. What do you believe is the role of the empath in today's world? Let's awaken together. 1. The true purpose of the empath. Awakener, not healer. Empaths were never meant to be emotional sponges, endlessly soaking up the wounds of others. Their soul was not designed for rescue. It was born for revelation. Carl Jung warned us that what we fail to make conscious will rule our lives from the shadows. And this is precisely where the empath's role begins. Not in soothing discomfort, but in awakening what's been long denied. Their sensitivity is not a flaw to overcome. It is a sacred tool, an initiation into soul work, a portal into the unseen layers of the human condition. When they walk into a room, they don't just sense emotions, they decode silence. They don't just empathize, they expose. Through their very presence, they pull to the surface the rage we suppress, the shame we inherited, the grief we never voiced, and the pain that has echoed across bloodlines for generations. This ability to feel the collective unconscious is not random, it is archetypal. Empaths mirror humanity's spiritual wounds. They hold up a soul-deep reflection that forces others to confront what they've buried. And this mirror is not always welcome. Society rewards the illusion of strength and punishes emotional honesty. So when an empath stands firm in their truth, they are often misunderstood, rejected, or accused of being too sensitive. But their gift is not emotional instability, it's energetic precision. Their body is wired to register what is unspoken, to translate psychic residue into embodied experience. And this isn't just emotional intelligence, it's spiritual radar. It's how the soul says, pay attention. Something here is unresolved. Empaths were not sent to be healers in the traditional sense. They were sent to make us uncomfortable enough to awaken, to agitate the soul into remembering what it promised to heal before it came into this life. But this role is not for the faint of heart. Empaths must learn not to drown in the pain they expose. They must become soul warriors strong enough to witness the shadow without becoming it. Their growth lies in learning that absorbing others' pain is not noble, it's self-abandonment. Their true power is in reflecting pain without internalizing it. This is where spiritual maturity begins, not with fixing others, but with seeing clearly and choosing to hold space without self-erasure. The empath's journey is the individuation process. Jung spoke of the integration of the personal and collective shadow into consciousness. It is the soul's rite of passage from emotional enmeshment to embodied truth. And through this, they don't just survive, they transmute. They take what is hidden and make it holy. They turn ancestral trauma into spiritual wisdom. They walk into the darkness not to be consumed by it, but to retrieve what the world forgot. The truth that healing doesn't begin with comfort, it begins with courage. Have you ever felt like your sensitivity was a curse, only to realize it was actually your calling. If you've discovered the deeper purpose of being an empath, share your insight in the comments. If you're still awakening to it, comment below. I embrace my soul's truth, and let's walk this path of spiritual awakening together. 2. The collective shadow and the archetype of the wounded mirror. Carl Jung warned that the empath's true role is not to heal, but to reveal. In a world that praises self-sacrifice and emotional caretaking, we've romanticized the empath as a gentle savior meant to mend the broken. But this is a comforting illusion that blinds us to their real spiritual function. Empaths are not here to be everyone's therapist. They are mirrors for the soul of humanity, reflectors of the collective shadow, that vast buried pool of unspoken shame, unprocessed trauma, and rejected truth we've cast into the unconscious. Their sensitivity is not a flaw. It is an attunement to what most people deny. They carry the emotional weight of generations, absorbing energies that never began with them, ancestral pain, cultural repression, societal grief. They are not emotionally weak. They are psychically calibrated to pick up what others run from. Consider Thomas, a high-functioning lawyer who always looked perfect on paper. Sharp, charming, successful. But every night, he came home feeling drained, confused by emotions that didn't belong to him. He felt the grief behind a coworker's smile. He sensed the resentment hidden under polite conversations. He absorbed the despair no one spoke of. For years, he thought he was broken and too sensitive for this world. But Jung would have told him, "Your pain is the echo of the collective, not a personal defect. You are the one who feels what others bury." The soul of an empath does not just react, it remembers. It stores the emotional codes of entire systems and families. And when you begin to honor this instead of fix it, the whole meaning of your sensitivity changes. An empath doesn't walk into a room and try to fix people they walk in and feel what is hidden. Their nervous system picks up emotional vibrations like sonar. The empath isn't overwhelmed because they're fragile. They're overwhelmed because they're tuned into the unspoken, the unseen, the unresolved. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And that's exactly what empaths interrupt. They disrupt the avoidance. Their presence alone can trigger discomfort in others because it brings buried emotions to the surface, not by confrontation, but by resonance. They become a mirror, and people often don't like what they see reflected. This is why so many empaths feel misunderstood, attacked, or drained. They are not just navigating their own emotions, they are navigating the shadow field of humanity itself. But the moment an empath stops trying to fix others and starts witnessing with clarity, everything shifts. They stop absorbing and start discerning. They stop rescuing and start revealing. They realize they were never meant to be containers of pain, but catalysts for truth. Their soul didn't come here to carry other people's burdens. It came to awaken them to their own. This is not the path of the wounded healer, it is the path of the wounded mirror. One who reflects so clearly that it becomes impossible to lie, to suppress, or to pretend. This is the spiritual task Carl Jung hinted at, to make the darkness conscious. And empaths are the torchbearers of this task, not by force, but by presence. When you honor your role as a spiritual mirror instead of a savior, you reclaim your boundaries, your power, and your peace. You are not here to heal the world by losing yourself in it. You are here to stay awake to the soul of the world and remind it of what it has forgotten. That is the lesson. That is the truth. That is your mirror. If you feel the weight of emotions that aren't entirely yours, if you've sensed you're mirroring something bigger than yourself, comment below. I carry the collective light. Let's honor the empath's deeper role together and illuminate what the world tries to ignore. 3. The empath's suffering is an initiation, not a disorder. Empaths have long been misunderstood, mislabeled as fragile, dramatic, or emotionally unstable, when in truth, their pain is part of a profound spiritual initiation. Their suffering is not a malfunction. It's an ancient calling encoded deep within the soul. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And that is exactly what the empath's journey demands. Radical self-acceptance of a nature that feels everything, absorbs everything, and sees what others refuse to see. Empaths are not just emotional, they are spiritual mirrors, reflecting back the parts of humanity that have been buried, denied, or exiled. They carry not only their own wounds, but also the repressed grief of generations. Their dreams are not just dreams. They are mythic transmissions from the unconscious of the collective, warning, guiding, and revealing truths that words alone cannot speak. Their body reacts to energy before logic catches up, and their nervous system, often dismissed as too sensitive, is actually a finely tuned antenna for spiritual resonance. The empath's symptoms of anxiety, fatigue, and emotional overwhelm are not signs of weakness, but messages from a spiritual operating system designed to detect misalignment and dishonesty in the world around them. They don't just walk through life, they absorb its unseen vibrations, and this often makes others uncomfortable. Why? Because the empath exposes, not through confrontation, but through presence. And presence is the most honest mirror there is. The reason people ghost them, attack them, or misunderstand them is because the empath's energy unearths hidden guilt, shame, and unresolved trauma in others. They awaken what is asleep and bring discomfort to what has been comfortably numb. Their existence becomes an invitation, unspoken, unintentional for others to deal with what they have long avoided. You see, the empath was never sent to heal in the way most people imagine. They weren't meant to bandage the world's wounds while bleeding out themselves. They were born to reveal, and revelation is sacred. It precedes true healing. It forces the illusion to crack so that light can enter. That's why empaths are so often targeted, scapegoated, or isolated, because in a world addicted to emotional anesthesia, feeling everything is a revolutionary act. The empath becomes a spiritual catalyst, not through effort, but by being fully themselves. And when they begin to realize that their pain is not personal, but archetypal, everything shifts. They stop trying to fix others and begin to honor their own energy. They stop carrying what isn't theirs and learn to discern what's simply passing through. They stop apologizing for being too much and start recognizing that they were never too much. They were simply in environments that demanded too little depth. Their path isn't easy, but it is sacred. For in every tear they've shed, every emotion they've held, and every silence they've endured, they have served as vessels of truth. They remind humanity of what it means to feel, to witness, to not look away. And in doing so, they reclaim their spiritual authority, not as saviors, but as soul initiates, revealing the buried pain of the tribe so that something real, something honest, something whole can finally rise. If this message spoke to your soul and helped you see your sensitivity in a new light, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your reflections in the comments below. Let's continue uncovering the deeper purpose behind the empath's journey together. 4. The path of transmutation, from sponge to alchemist. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, and that truth lies at the heart of every empath's spiritual path." You were never meant to be a sponge, endlessly soaking up the pain of others until it poisons your spirit. You were meant to become an alchemist, a soul who transforms suffering into insight and shadow into light. For too long, you may have mistaken your sensitivity for a curse, believing your role was to heal, to fix, to sacrifice. But true healing does not begin with rescuing others. It begins with remembering who you are. When the soul awakens, the empath no longer bleeds to make others whole. He sees that his sensitivity was not weakness, but preparation, not burden, but initiation. You were not called to martyrdom, but to mastery. To live as an awakened empath means transcending the reflex to fuse with others' emotions and stepping into the power of conscious witnessing. You are not here to dissolve into others' wounds. You are here to reflect them. The empath who rises stops personalizing what does not belong to him. He becomes the chalice, not the sponge, the sacred container, not the emotional landfill. Through discernment, he learns to feel without being devoured, to care without collapsing, to stand in love without losing himself. Boundaries, once feared as barriers, become the soul's defense against self-betrayal. He no longer abandons himself to make others comfortable. He honors his truth and protects his peace. This is the transmutation Jung spoke of, turning the raw energy of chaos into clarity through inner stillness and spiritual sovereignty. When an empath matures, he sees that he was never called to soothe dysfunction or pacify shadows. He was called to awaken people to what they refuse to face. His presence disrupts illusions. His silence speaks truths others are desperate to avoid. And yes, it may trigger, repel, or provoke, but that is part of his function. Because the empath's soul does not exist to maintain comfort. It exists to catalyze transformation. This is not about saving others. It's about standing so fully in your own healed frequency that others are forced to confront what they've buried. Just like the alchemists of old turned base metal into gold, the evolved empath turns pain into power, guilt into guidance, trauma into teaching. His wounds become windows, his sorrow becomes language, and his spirit becomes a lighthouse. The world will not always understand this role because it prefers empaths who stay small, compliant, endlessly giving. But the true empath is not here to be liked. He is here to reveal what has been hidden. The soul of the awakened empath holds both sensitivity and strength, compassion and confrontation, softness and fire. He stops asking for permission to exist and starts embodying the sacred responsibility of being the mirror. No longer afraid to reflect the collective shadow, he embraces his purpose: to transmute, to witness, to transform, not because he chose the path, but because the path chose him. If you're ready to stop absorbing and start alchemizing, declare it in the comments. I am the chalice. I transmute shadow into wisdom. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this message with others on the path of transformation. 5. Awakening the soul's myth and becoming a living symbol. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This truth reveals the deeper mission of the empath, not to fix, heal, or carry the burdens of others, but to expose what humanity refuses to confront within itself. The awakened empath is not a passive observer or an emotional sponge. They are an oracle, a living symbol of integration who walks at the edge of opposites between shadow and light, chaos and clarity, past and future. They disturb illusions not by force, but by embodying truth so deeply that it becomes impossible to ignore. Their spiritual presence calls out the masks people wear and the stories they tell themselves, not through confrontation, but through the unsettling clarity of simply being real. Sensitivity in this case is not fragility, it is depth. It is the soul's capacity to feel what others suppress and to remain whole in the face of fragmentation. In today's world, imagine the empath as the one in a room who speaks with silence, who unnerves the crowd by refusing to perform. They don't play roles. They don't seek applause. They don't participate in the emotional transactions most people rely on to avoid facing themselves. Their very presence becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready to look. Carl Jung warned that what we repress, we project, and empaths often carry the weight of that projection. They are called too intense, too soft, too much. But this too much is exactly what the soul needs to evolve. The empath is not here to rescue others from their pain. They are here to remind others of the pain they keep avoiding. And in doing so, they trigger transformation, not by effort, but by embodiment. This is not about being a martyr. The true empath has learned that constantly sacrificing themselves leads only to burnout, not healing. They begin to understand that the soul doesn't evolve through rescue, it evolves through revelation. And so they stop over-giving, stop over-explaining, and stop trying to be understood. Instead, they start to live as symbols. Symbols don't argue, they don't explain. They just exist, and their existence changes everything. This is what makes the empath a threat to systems built on suppression. They are the disruption that says, "What you've buried, I've become. What you've denied, I've embodied." They force a reckoning, not through words, but through spiritual gravity. The deeper lesson here is not that empaths must protect themselves from the world, but that they must stop betraying their own truth to make the world feel safe. The soul's power lies in its refusal to abandon itself. And when an empath finally honors their sensitivity, their intuition, and their sacred discomfort with falsehood, they awaken not just as a person, but as a myth. They no longer fit in because they are no longer trying to. They walk as a contradiction, soft yet unshakable, open yet untouchable, wounded yet wise. And this paradox is their gift to the world, not to heal its surface, but to expose its wound so it may finally begin to heal itself. This is what Carl Jung tried to show us. This is the path of the empath, not as healer, but as revealer. Not as a fixer, but as a mirror. Not as a rescuer, but as sacred disruption. If this message stirred something deep within you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more spiritual insights. Here on Spiritual Wisdom, we explore the path of becoming not perfection, but presence. Share your thoughts, in the comments, and let's awaken the myth together. 6. The role of the empath in a dying culture. In a society that has numbed itself to feeling, the empath becomes a silent revolution. Not by shouting, not by demanding, but simply by feeling. Deeply, unapologetically. And in doing so, they disrupt the false harmony of a world that thrives on avoidance. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The empath is the one who makes the unconscious conscious. They don't just observe pain, they embody it. They absorb the unspoken sorrow, the generational shame, the cultural grief that others run from. And by holding that weight, they become mirrors that force others to see what they have long buried. Their gift is not to heal the wound, but to reveal where it festers. Not to soothe, but to stir. Not to rescue, but to awaken. To be an empath is not to be weak or fragile. It is to carry the spiritual memory of what it means to be fully human in an age that has forgotten. They are midwives of inner transformation, birthing new paradigms not through force, but through raw presence. They bring to light the truth that society tries so hard to repress, that emotional repression is not strength, it is sickness, that what we ignore in ourselves becomes what we inflict on others. And while the world praises efficiency and detachment, the empath bleeds truth. Their body aches where society is wounded. Their soul cries where the collective has gone silent. But that pain is not a flaw. It is a signal that something essential has been lost, that something sacred is calling to be remembered. In relationships, workplaces, families, and communities, the empath is often misunderstood, labeled too sensitive, too intense, too much. But their intensity is not a defect. It is a reflection of a society that has grown too cold to feel. Empaths do not come to offer comfort. They come to shake foundations. They are not meant to blend in, but to illuminate, to bring the hidden into the light. And that means they often walk alone, not because they are unworthy of belonging, but because their energy exposes the truth others are not yet ready to see. They disturb the illusion. They activate what's been suppressed. And while the world may push them away, the soul recognizes them because they carry the codes of something ancient, something real, something sacred. The empath's spiritual purpose is not to carry everyone's pain, but to show others where they've lost touch with their own. They are not emotional dumpsters. They are sacred barometers. And when they stop trying to fix what isn't theirs to heal, they rise, not as martyrs, but as mirrors. Not as saviors, but as signalers. They don't save others. They awaken others to the truth within themselves. And that is the real medicine. That is the real miracle. Not in taking away pain, but in helping others see it clearly for the first time. In a world desperate to stay asleep, the empath becomes the alarm. And in their stillness, in their depth, in their refusal to harden, they remind us of what it truly means to feel, and why that feeling might be the most spiritual act of all. If this message stirred something deep within you, take a moment to affirm your role in this world. Comment below. I am a midwife of the new paradigm. I feel deeply, and I stand with the truth. And if you resonate with this vision, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll never miss the next soul-shifting message from spiritual wisdom. 7. Final initiation, liberation, sovereignty, and soul alignment. True healing for the empath does not come from fixing others. It comes from remembering that their role was never to be the eternal rescuer, but the sacred witness. Their pain was never meant to be carried forever. It was meant to be understood, released, and transformed. The final initiation of the empath is not found in more suffering, but in liberation. Liberation from the need to please, from the burden of emotional absorption, from the illusion that their worth depends on how much they can carry for others. When an empath begins living in coherence with their soul, something extraordinary happens. They stop asking to be seen and start radiating truth. Their presence no longer seeks validation. It becomes a mirror that reflects the suppressed pain, shame, and shadow that society has long tried to avoid. They no longer walk into rooms silently shrinking. They walk in and shift the energy by simply being in alignment with who they truly are. Carl Jung warned that the empath's true task is not to heal, but to reveal. Their sensitivity is not a wound, it is a radar. Their empathy is not weakness, it is spiritual intelligence. Yet, for most of their lives, they were conditioned to betray that intelligence to avoid being too much. They were taught to deny their soul in order to be accepted, to silence their truth so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. But the cost of that betrayal is soul deep. And eventually, something breaks. Not in a destructive way, but in a liberating one. They begin to see that their suffering was never random. It was a coded invitation to awaken. The empath, in their final spiritual transformation, stops asking what others need from them and starts asking what their soul needs to express through them. They become sovereign, not in rebellion, but in remembrance. They remember that their life is not meant to be lived through the expectations of others, but through the alignment of soul, purpose, and inner freedom. This is where the true power of the empath is revealed, not in the endless effort to fix others, but in the quiet refusal to betray themselves. They become a living symbol of what it means to embody truth without explanation, to walk away without guilt, and to feel deeply without drowning. Their soul no longer reacts, it resonates. And through this resonance, they transmit a new frequency to the world, one of clarity, sovereignty, and sacred presence. They stop performing. They stop over-explaining. They stop negotiating their boundaries. Instead, they simply live in such radical truth that others are forced to confront their own illusions. This is not arrogance, it is energetic clarity, and it is only possible when the empath chooses to align with their soul rather than their wounds. In this final phase, the empath becomes the myth breaker, the pattern disruptor, the spiritual catalyst. They don't need to be loud, aggressive, or dominant. Their power is not in how they speak, it's in the vibration of who they are. Their soul becomes their signature. Their sovereignty becomes their silence, and their presence becomes their purpose. To honor your sacred journey towards soul alignment and sovereignty, comment below. I release what's not mine and walk in truth. And if this message has awakened something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on notifications so you never miss a moment of transformation. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey into the true role of the empath. If this message resonated with your soul, if it helped you see yourself or the world a little more clearly, we invite you to be part of the conversation. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights that awaken, empower, and transform. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next chapter in your journey of spiritual understanding. Until next time, honor your sensitivity. It is not weakness, but revelation. Awakening made you tired of people. Carl Jung says it's a sign of this deeper shift. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt like your spiritual awakening is making you withdraw from people not out of pride, but out of something deeper shifting inside you? You're not alone. In today's episode on spiritual wisdom, we'll explore why feeling tired of people might actually be a sign of profound inner transformation. Carl Jung called this the beginning of individuation, the sacred journey of returning to your authentic self. If you've ever felt disconnected from shallow conversations or drained by old environments, this message is for you. Drop a comment below. Have you experienced this shift? Let's grow together by sharing our insights and supporting each other on this awakening path. 1. Awakening changes your frequency and creates emotional distance. Spiritual awakening shifts something deep within you, not just your thoughts or beliefs, but your entire energetic frequency. Suddenly, the world feels different. What once felt familiar now feels foreign. Conversations that used to bring comfort now feel repetitive and draining. You try to engage, to stay present, but your body tightens and your spirit resists. It's not that you're judging anyone. It's not that you think you're above them, but you can't deny that something has changed. You're no longer aligned with the emotional wavelength you once shared with others, and this creates an invisible yet undeniable distance. The people around you haven't necessarily changed, but you have. The shift is subtle yet seismic. You no longer find satisfaction in gossip, complaints, or small talk. It feels like noise, like static. Your soul craves depth, meaning, truth. You begin to notice how often people speak without really saying anything. You listen, but the words pass through you. There's no resonance, no spark, no nourishment. You're not being cold or closed off. You're simply attuning to a different frequency, one that values inner presence over outer performance. This emotional distance isn't a flaw or a phase. It's part of the process. A natural byproduct of awakening is detachment from the familiar, from the roles you used to play, from the relationships that once defined you. You're not pushing people away. You're being pulled inward. Your energy is calling you home to yourself. And in that return, there's an inevitable solitude. The noise quiets, the room empties, and for a while, it might feel like a loss. But what you're actually experiencing is alignment. Carl Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." When you awaken, your priorities change. Your emotional language deepens, and not everyone speaks it. That's what creates the ache, the realization that most of the world is still operating on autopilot, while you've begun to question everything. You see through illusions. You feel the weight behind the words. You sense what's not being said. And you can't go back to pretending it doesn't matter. You start to notice who drains you and who nourishes you, who listens just to respond, and who listens to understand, who mirrors your old self, and who reflects the version you're becoming. The space between those two selves, the old you and the emerging you, feels like a void. But it's not emptiness. It's sacred space. It's the cocoon between identities, the stillness before transformation. And even though it's uncomfortable, it's necessary. Your spirit is recalibrating. Your nervous system is learning peace. Your boundaries are becoming clearer. You no longer tolerate chaos masked as connection. You no longer chase validation in places that never truly saw you. This isn't bitterness, it's clarity. This isn't detachment, it's discernment. You're not isolating yourself, you're protecting your frequency. You're making room for new connections that match your depth, your values, your truth. Let the silence stretch. Let the loneliness teach you. Let the disconnection refine you. Because you're not breaking down, you're breaking through. And on the other side of this shift, you will find people who feel like home. You will speak, and you'll be heard. You will feel, and you'll be met. Until then, trust the distance. It's not a punishment. It's a sign you're awakening. Have you ever noticed your relationship shifting after a spiritual awakening? If so, share your experience in the comments. Your story might help someone feel less alone. And if you're still navigating that emotional distance, comment below. I'm learning to honor my new frequency, to affirm your journey. Let's grow together in this space of truth and transformation. 2. Carl Jung's concept of individuation explains the loneliness. Carl Jung called it individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are by shedding who you were told to be. And it doesn't feel like a celebration. It feels like being stripped bare. As the layers of the false self begin to dissolve, the roles, masks, performances you wore to survive, everything tied to that false self starts to crumble too. You feel it in your relationships first. The people who once made you feel safe now drain you. Conversations that once comforted you now feel unbearably empty. You're not judging anyone. You're simply no longer willing to abandon yourself to belong. This is what no one prepares you for, the grief of spiritual awakening. It's not just about gaining insight. It's about losing identities, dynamics, and emotional patterns that kept you tethered to an old version of you. You sit in rooms full of people and feel like a ghost. You smile out of habit, but your soul is elsewhere, seeking meaning, craving truth, starving for depth. What you once tolerated now triggers discomfort. What you once ignored now screams for your attention. And in that quiet unraveling, spiritual wisdom begins to whisper. This pain is proof you are waking up. When you awaken, your energy changes. You stop resonating with the frequency of small talk, gossip, approval seeking, and emotional performance. You no longer feel at home in environments that thrive on disconnection and distraction. And so you retreat. You withdraw, not because you hate people, but because your spirit is tired of noise. You're learning to protect your peace. You're learning that being alone is not loneliness, it's recalibration. As your nervous system detoxes from years of overstimulation, your body demands stillness. Your soul demands truth. And in that space, you start to remember who you are without the noise. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege comes with a cost, the death of who you're not. Awakening is not glamorous. It's raw. It strips you down and asks, what is real? And most of what you thought was real, the friendships based on fear, the love built on codependency, the laughter masking pain dissolves under the light of your new awareness. You mourn not just people, but versions of yourself. You grieve for the years you spent asleep, performing, pretending. And yet, in that grief, there's beauty, because every tear carves space for a more authentic life. Spiritual wisdom teaches you to hold that paradox. You feel more whole than ever, yet more isolated. You see clearer than ever, yet feel misunderstood. But the ache you carry is not emptiness, it's expansion. Your soul is making room for alignment. You're being called to relationships that nourish you, not drain you. To conversations that heal, not distract. To have a presence that feels like home, not performance. And slowly, your loneliness becomes solitude. Your silence becomes a sanctuary. And your awakening, though heavy, becomes the most honest thing you've ever known. Comment below. I choose authenticity. If you're ready to embrace your individuation journey and let go of who you were told to be. 3. The real drain is not people. It's pretending to be someone you're not. You're not tired because people are toxic. You're tired because your soul is done performing. You've worn masks for so long, smiling when you didn't feel like it, nodding along to stay polite, laughing at jokes that didn't land in your heart. It's not that the world changed overnight. It's that you've stopped abandoning yourself just to belong. The real drain isn't the noise around you. It's the silence inside you every time you betray your truth to maintain the peace. Carl Jung once said that individuation, the journey toward becoming your most authentic self, demands the breakdown of who you thought you had to be. This shift isn't comfortable. In fact, it's painfully disruptive. You feel it in your chest when a friend calls to gossip and your body tightens. You feel it in your throat when someone asks how you are and you want to tell the truth, but smile instead. The tiredness comes not from them, but from you pretending everything still fits when it doesn't. You don't need less connection. You need less pretending. The nervous system, trained for years to seek safety and approval, now fights against your evolution. It pulls you back into old roles. The agreeable one, the fixer, the strong one who never complains. But now, each time you step into those roles, something inside you winces. It's because your spirit has already moved on, even if your habits haven't caught up. There's nothing wrong with you for needing space. There's nothing wrong with you for canceling plans, for choosing solitude over small talk, for saying no without explanation. That's not selfish. It's sacred. You're creating room for your real self to breathe. And yes, it will confuse people. They've grown attached to the version of you that performed well, stayed quiet, and showed up no matter what it cost. But you've paid those costs with your peace, and your spirit is tired of the debt. This shift will feel lonely at first, but that loneliness isn't emptiness, it's clarity. You're not withdrawing because you hate people. You're pausing because you love yourself enough to stop leaking energy into situations that no longer align. You're not distancing to punish others. You're reclaiming the parts of you that have been buried beneath years of expectations, roles, and emotional labor. Carl Jung reminds us that the deeper you go into your own unconscious, the more you begin to live in alignment with your true nature. And as you shed what's false, you also shed the crowds that were drawn to the performance, not the person. What's left isn't emptiness, it's freedom. It's the beginning of genuine connection, rooted in truth, not in survival. You're not tired of people. you're tired of pretending. And that distinction changes everything. If this message speaks to your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt drained, not by people, but by the pressure to be someone you're not? Let's talk about it below and continue uncovering what it really means to live in your truth. 4. Shadow work deepens self-awareness and sensitivity. Shadow work is not just some abstract idea tossed around in spiritual circles. It's the very essence of what happens when a spiritual awakening starts to unfold. As your inner world begins to expand, you don't just discover more light, you become aware of the darkness you've been hiding from. The shadow is made of all the parts of yourself you were taught to reject. Your anger, your fears, your shame, your unmet needs. And suddenly, you can't keep them buried anymore. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that's exactly what's happening. You're waking up to everything you've avoided. You begin to notice how emotionally charged every interaction becomes. It's like you can feel through people's words, piercing beneath their surface to the pain they're not saying aloud. You sit with someone, and while they smile, you feel their anxiety. While they laugh, you sense their sadness. While they complain, you pick up on their hidden longing. You're no longer just hearing voices, you're reading energy, soaking up unspoken truths. This sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's the side effect of becoming deeply self-aware. Because as you start recognizing the masks you once wore, you begin recognizing them in others too. But this level of awareness comes with a cost. You start to feel overstimulated in places you used to enjoy. The party feels too loud. The office gossip feels toxic. Conversations feel like they're draining your soul because they no longer resonate with your spirit. What once felt normal now feels artificial, forced, and flat. This isn't social anxiety, it's soul misalignment. You've outgrown shallow waters, and your spirit is calling you into the deep. The problem is, not everyone wants to dive with you. And that's where the loneliness begins. You might find yourself walking away from friendships that once defined you. Not because you're better than anyone, but because your nervous system now demands peace, not performance. You begin prioritizing solitude, stillness, and truth over noise, chaos, and pretense. You'd rather be alone than shrink yourself to stay connected. This is shadow integration. You're no longer externalizing your discomfort. You're meeting it inside yourself. You see your triggers. You face your wounds. You stop blaming and start healing. And while this journey can feel isolating, it also births immense compassion. Because when you realize that most people are wearing emotional armor, not to deceive you, but to survive, you soften. You no longer take things so personally. You see pain underneath pride, trauma beneath anger, fear behind control. And suddenly, even the most difficult people become mirrors, reflecting what you've conquered and what you still need to embrace. This phase of spiritual awakening isn't always pretty. It's not about light and love all the time. It's about facing your darkness without flinching. It's about becoming so honest with yourself that dishonesty in others becomes unbearable. And the more you evolve, the more you crave authenticity like oxygen. Your nervous system stops tolerating anything fake. And that's not weakness, that's transformation. Do you feel your sensitivity growing as your self-awareness deepens? Shadow work is not weakness, it's courage. If you recognize this transformation within yourself, affirm it in the comments below. I embrace my shadow and grow in truth. 5. You begin attracting more authentic, energetically aligned relationships. As you begin to heal, something deep within you shifts. You no longer crave attention from the wrong people. You stop trying to impress, entertain, or prove yourself. Without realizing it, your energy becomes clearer, more honest, and that honesty begins to speak louder than words. Suddenly, you find yourself uninterested in shallow conversations and emotionally unavailable people. You begin to crave something real, something that speaks to your soul, not your wounds. This is a sacred moment in your spiritual awakening, the moment your energy starts filtering out anything that was only meant to feed your survival patterns. You're no longer running on the need to belong at any cost. You're remembering who you are without the masks. But this shift doesn't come without discomfort. When you stop performing, some people will leave. Not because you've changed too much, but because the relationship was never built on truth. It was built on your performance. As that performance drops, so does the illusion of closeness. This is where solitude steps in, not as a punishment, but as preparation. The silence isn't empty, it's sacred. It's where your intuition becomes louder than your fear. It's where you learn the difference between being alone and being aligned. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important." You're not lonely. You're just no longer interested in communicating in a language that betrays your soul. During this sacred solitude, your energy field recalibrates. You're no longer broadcasting the frequency of fear, approval-seeking, or insecurity. You're radiating something much more powerful, wholeness. And wholeness doesn't beg, it attracts. You begin to notice that some people no longer text you back. Some invitations stop coming. And even though your mind may panic, your soul knows this is the clearing before the blessing. It's the pruning of old energies so that something more aligned can take root. And what comes next is not louder, but deeper. Real connection, real recognition, real resonance. The people who begin to appear feel different. Their presence is calming. Their words don't drain you. They restore you. You no longer feel like you have to shrink or edit yourself to be understood. These new relationships don't demand performance. They welcome presence. You feel safe, not because they complete you, but because they reflect the completeness you've discovered within. This is spiritual wisdom in motion, the unfolding of relationships that reflect your healed state, not your wounded self. Let this process take its time. Let the empty spaces stretch. Don't fill the void with noise. Don't run back to what hurt you just because it's familiar. Trust that your frequency is doing the work for you now. You're not just attracting people anymore, you're attracting reflections. And the clearer you become, the clearer they'll be. This isn't loneliness. This is alignment. This isn't a loss. This is liberation. And this isn't the end of connection. It's the beginning of something real, something sacred, something your soul has been waiting for your entire life. If this message speaks to your soul, take a deep breath and declare it now. I am ready for aligned, soul-nourishing connections. I trust what is meant for me will find me. 6. Your nervous system is evolving alongside your consciousness. Awakening isn't just something that happens in your mind. It's not just about new thoughts or spiritual beliefs. It runs deeper than that into your nervous system, your physical body, and your energetic field. As your consciousness rises, your body begins to respond. You start to notice how certain environments make you tense, how your heart races in rooms filled with noise or surface-level chatter, and how exhausted you feel after even small conversations. This is not a weakness or social anxiety. This is your nervous system evolving to meet the sensitivity of your expanding awareness. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And that pain often manifests physically before your mind can make sense of it. Your system is becoming more attuned to energy, to frequency, to authenticity. What once felt normal, gossip, chaos, meaningless busyness, now feels unbearable. Not because you're superior or judgmental, but because you're no longer aligned with it. The people and places that don't match your new vibration feel heavy. You're not becoming distant, you're becoming precise. This shift in sensitivity can be confusing at first. It often feels like loneliness, like you're pulling away from everything you once knew. But in reality, your body is trying to protect you from overstimulation as it learns to operate in a higher state of consciousness. Your nervous system is shedding years, maybe even decades, of noise and conditioning. And just like muscles, after a workout, it needs time to rest and adjust. There's a woman named Elena who used to be deeply social, always surrounded by people. After a retreat that awakened something within her, she came back home and felt like a stranger in her own life. Her usual routines exhausted her. Her friends' conversations felt shallow. She tried to force herself to engage like she used to, but her body resisted. Eventually, she stopped resisting too. She started honoring her new rhythm. And in that silence, she found herself again. Carl Jung's teachings on individuation remind us that becoming whole means breaking away from what is false. And sometimes, what is false isn't just a mask we wear. It's the energy we've tolerated. It's the relationships we've outgrown. It's the noise we once called normal. So when your nervous system begins to reject what you used to accept, it's not regression. It's refinement. It's your soul making space for truth. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a compass. It tells you when something feels off, even if you can't explain it. It guides you away from the loud and shallow, toward the deep and real. And as you keep honoring that truth, even when it makes you tired, even when it makes you lonely, you're building a kind of strength that the world rarely sees: energetic integrity. This process of awakening through the body is sacred. It requires grace, patience, and trust. Your nervous system is not betraying you. It's guiding you toward peace, toward clarity, toward a life that no longer drains you but nourishes you. If this message resonates with your journey, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. Your nervous system is evolving for your highest good. Comment below, "I am aligning with my new energetic self," to affirm your transformation and inspire others on the same path. 7. True awakening means wholeness, not superiority. Spiritual awakening is not about becoming superior to others. It's about becoming whole within yourself. The real journey begins when you stop trying to escape your pain and start embracing it as part of your story. Your spiritual path is not meant to make you feel above anyone else. That feeling of being more conscious, more aware, or more enlightened than others is not true wisdom. It's the trap of the spiritual ego. And the ego doesn't disappear just because you meditate or say affirmations. It simply puts on a new mask, often a holier one. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That means the parts of you that you've ignored, rejected, or tried to spiritually bypass, the shame, the guilt, the inner child still grieving, these are not blocks to awakening. They are the doorway. The real transformation happens not when you rise above your humanity, but when you integrate it. You stop chasing the idea of perfection and start honoring your wounds as sacred. When you come into wholeness, your energy becomes stable. You no longer feel the need to prove anything. You are no longer triggered by people who don't get it, because you realize they're walking their own path, just like you once did. You don't need to control outcomes or convince anyone to change. Instead, your peace speaks for itself. You begin to attract people not through effort, but through presence, not through status, but through sincerity. You also begin to see that the roles you once played, the people pleaser, the overachiever, the fixer, were survival tactics, not your truth. The more you awaken, the less interested you become in playing those roles. You stop reacting from old wounds and start responding from clarity. Conversations that once excited you now feel empty. Environments that once felt like home now feel misaligned. And it's not because you're better than others. It's because you're no longer abandoning yourself to belong. This shift isn't loud. It doesn't look dramatic. It's subtle. You find yourself sitting in silence more. You feel less urgency to be understood. You're not running away from the world, but you're no longer ruled by it either. You become rooted in something deeper, your own essence. And from this grounded state, you emit a calm, loving, magnetic energy. Some will be drawn to it. Others will misunderstand it. But you no longer take it personally. You've stopped living to be received. You're living to be real. Wholeness is when your inner child, your present self, and your higher self are all sitting at the same table, finally seen, finally heard, finally loved. You are not fragmented. You are not pretending. You are simply being. And in that being, there is power. A quiet, unshakable power. Not because you have risen above the world, but because you have descended into the depths of your own soul and found peace even there. That is the essence of true spiritual awakening. To affirm your dedication to true awakening, declare your commitment to inner wholeness, not superiority. Comment below. I choose wholeness over ego. To honor your journey and inspire others to walk this path with humility, compassion, and truth. And maybe that's the part no one tells you, that awakening doesn't always feel like light and love at first. Sometimes it feels like distance, like silence, like pulling away from the noise so you can finally hear your own soul. But this shift isn't disconnection, it's realignment. You're not losing people, you're finding yourself. If this message spoke to something deep within you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who may need it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Tap the notification bell so you never miss a moment of truth, healing, and awakening. Your journey is sacred, and we're honored to walk it with you.